everybody. Thank you for joining us for the Columbia Concert Band's second weekend with James Houlik. The last one seemed like just yesterday in 2004. And we have a really amazing schedule lined up for the weekend. This masterclass will go until about 3 o'clock. And then the Columbia Concert Band will adjourn with Mr. Houlik to rehearse for our performance tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll start things off with a clinic at 1 o'clock, followed by the performance of the Columbia Concert Band with Mr. Houlik, and we'll be doing the Ward Concerto along with some other great stuff, and we'll be convincing Mr. Houlik to join us on a couple of the other pieces as well. So we'll go approximately 20 to 25 minutes per performer with the master class here to make sure we get done at before 3 o'clock. And first up is Sarah Bank, who is an alto saxophonist here at River Hill, and her pianist is Deanna Polinero, Polarano, who's from Atherton High School. Sarah's private instructor is Eric Posner, who happens to be Deanna's band director. It's kind of a Shakespearean. So, would you join me in welcoming Sarah Bank and Mr. James Houlik?
Where do you want to stand, Sarah? Well, do you want to stand here, or do you want to see her?
I want to go see.
When I want to do that, I usually stand over here, and that way I've got this view. That be okay? I mean, it works for me, but if you want to be anywhere, or you can go in the other room, wherever you're most comfortable. Teaching already. Would you play about a half a dynamic louder, and that way you'll get a much more honest idea of what the pitch is. Are you doing all four movements? First thing we do is wipe our brow. Good for you. Let's stay right on the fourth movement. You began to realize that you were in trouble in terms of the time, right? Do you know why that had happened? Okay. The word, we need to put a vocabulary word on anything that we're trying to talk about. It's compression. You go, instead of like, ta-da-da-da-da-da-da, you go ta-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and you do it repeatedly, and after a while, you're gaining time. So you actually were running slightly ahead of the piano. So it's being sure that it's usually the first two notes that we will do this compression, and gradually we just get ahead of ourselves. Why don't you start it by yourself, and now think about ta-da-da-da-da-da-da, the real time, rather than time that is based upon nervosity. There's nothing to be nervous about. We've already had our shot, so go ahead. Ta-da-da-da, ta-da-da, ta-da-da-da. Let's just do that much. Ta-da-da-da, ta-da-da-da. Yeah, and we're going to turn it into a loop. I have a theory, and it's probably borne out somewhere in literature that I'm too dumb to read, but I think if we loop things as we learn, we do informed and very regular repetitions, we tend to we can study it better. We're under enough pressure to have to do it right immediately after we did it the first time, so we really do learn. Ta-da-ta-ta, 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 ta-da-ta-ta. Let's take a shot on Sarah. Ta-da-ta-ta. That note, that first note is a little longer, is ta-da-ta-ta, ta-da-ta-ta. Go ahead. All right, now start it and keep going by yourself, and then we're going to try it with your friend. But you went right back to the old habit. Did you hear how much you compressed that, how much shorter that space? And here's the deal. It's like starting skating. I used to ice skate, believe it or not, when the earth was still cooling. And, you know, to start ice skating, we don't have them both pointed forward, do we? You know, because it's one of those, right? It's ta-da-ta, ta-da-ta. Think of that physical feeling of turning that leg. Ta-da-ta-ta-ta, ta-da-ta. And it's got nothing to do with the saxophone, but it's an upper leg kind of a thing. It's the way we push off, okay? Let's go one more time by yourself. That was a little better. That was a little better. Do it one more time and take a chance on love. Make the first note even a little longer, okay? Because you can correct it. What you can't correct is having stolen time. Once you've stolen it, then you've now created this shorter moment, and you can't figure out where to add it back. But you can always speed up if you take too much at the beginning. And that's an important thing. And in fact, audiences love it when we start a run, tee-da-ta-ta-ta-tee-da-tum, because it begins, they're not thinking this, but they feel, is he going to get there on time? And that's a wonderful, you know, I used to play for the ice debates back when they used live musicians. And they had this bit, half the girls are facing this way and half of the girls are facing this way, they're making this circle. And the first show, one of the girls fell behind. And the audience is not impressed by this. They're impressed by this young woman who's fighting to catch up with the rest. And then it happened every show after that. And so, okay, here we go. And then the second one, you don't go back to the old habit. kind of music is this? Give it a broad title. What is it? Pardon me? Oh, no, 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 no. I mean, this very music. Make it easy. Is it a song or a dance? Yeah, sure, because the first movement's a song, isn't it? So, all right? So be thinking that way. Thinking about those upper legs, okay? Okay, if you can keep that idea, we're going to start this movement. And let's see if we can just stop this compression so we begin to get, one, the feeling of dance, which is the most important thing, and two, that we don't get ahead and you start looking back at your pianist going on here. Or, as we say, help me. No, you don't want help, just provide it. And here's the deal, she can see both parts. If you're laying it down where it counts, you don't have to worry about that. Okay? Sorry, both of them. Here we go. You got it. Perfect. Okay. Do you feel more confident when we begin to put things where they really belong? And it's a lot easier for you, isn't it, over here in the Elvis chair? You're not kidding. So that's the first thing. Let's go to the first move. I have a suggestion, Sarah. First of all, I'm always looking for meaning in music. I want to figure out, what am I doing? I'm not just playing notes. So I try to get an idea, what is this about? Is this happy or sad? It's, well, good. If it's not happy, we're moving toward the sad side, aren't we? And so it's a little more like the blues having been written in a classical, actually Baroque period. So let's just begin, and then we may stop and talk about it. One of the things I would suggest is we can use vibrato in varying ways. And so you kind of use it almost as an ornament. I think it could be more present as you play here, all right? Hear a little bit of it. I spend my life trying to keep my vibrato fast enough. It tends to run a little wide. But in this particular case, this is practically the blues written in another time, okay? And so it's mournful. My wife, she ran away. She ran with the UPS. Lord, how I hate those brown trucks. Okay, that's what this is about. So, and that's one of the issues. First of all, for musicians, we spend our time often depicting experiences we haven't had. Well, it's true, you see. And I mean, when I play light dance music, I don't think it's exactly intended for me, and so I have to find somebody else inside of me to do that job. So in this painting, you're a young, lovely thing, and you may not have this sense yet, you know. Catch in 40 years and maybe you'll have some basis in life experience to say this. So for now, you'll just have to make it up. Okay, so a little more vibrato and make it last through the notes as much as you can. We all tend to put the vibrato in the middle of the notes where it's safe. And then but if we start sooner or we end right before we move, we feel a little risk at hand because we might not be on pitch when we go to the next note. But take a chance. Once again, we're all friends. They're not even here. Go ahead. Okay, now the di-da-di, rather than give them a little personality. Connect those notes, and it's going to take on an even more mournful character. And the beauty of it is, we have this contrast between the allegro and the slow movements. The allegro, they're jumping around and being sprightly, and this stuff is being a little miserable, okay? Different in pitch. There are two things I would suggest. First, that I put on my reading glasses so I can see what I'm looking at. Old age is just a beast. My father told me before he died that it wasn't for sissies. All right, well, let me tell you something. Maybe this could be a little thicker. You can get a repair person to do it. But you can turn this down, and as this closes, this is where the D actually comes out. We call it the D key, but that's not where it comes out. So if you could move that down, just by turning that in, turn or two, the D would be flatter. And so would the E for that matter. I have a, they have a big wide screwdriver, but only repairmen have them. And so I go to the dollar store, and they sell me 2 spoons for $1. I can't buy 1 spoon at the dollar store. But I cut off the eating part and just keep the handle, bend the handle over, and I use that as a tool to do that. And I don't think that there's a student saxophone in my studio that hasn't received the magic spoon treatment. So that's an important thing. And lots of times, repairmen don't replace the bumpers. And the bumpers keep getting flatter and flatter, and thus the key is more open and it's sharp. I think that, how did you feel about the change we made in terms of a little more vibrato and connecting the notes? Is that good for you? You get the idea? I hope the UPS can idea helps you. We have to assign some meaning to the music. It just can't be about the notes. So it's time for you to go, Sarah. Thank you very much. I'm sent here to be critical, but the truth of it is that Sarah plays very musically, and she was wonderfully well prepared. That's really good stuff. You seem to be licking your reed.
Am I not supposed to do that?
That means it's your turn? I think that this is a pretty big guy who's willing to play at his own event.
This is where I explained somebody was going to play and backed out. That's my excuse. My name is still Michael Blackman. And my wonderful accompanist here is Chunmun Lok, who's a student here at River Hill. He's a marvelous French horn player as well. And my clarinet teacher was Ed Walters at the University of Maryland a quarter of a century ago, which is the last time I practiced. And I'm going to play the very popular Meditation from Thais by Massenet. You've probably heard this on a variety of different instruments. Should have been written for the saxophone.
be gentle here because I haven't been paid yet. Your D is sharp too.
Yeah, you think a little.
But you know, we are accepting everything. You know, saxophonists, we hear it, so we play by ourselves, and then we finally play in front of an ensemble with a pianist, and we realize that we haven't been monitoring pitch by ourselves. I do a lot of open interval exercises, so I get to enjoy the fifths and fourths and the things that are close but not quite there. And maybe I should do my 2-second tirade on tuners. I use a tuner. This week I was practicing on a piece, and I heard it wrong actually. And it was just the situation, the actual intervals were just a little weird. So I used the tuner. But generally, I think we should be using our ears, and if we have a tuner, we should get what we think is right, and then take a look at it. Otherwise, we're teaching our eyes and not our ears, not our processing system. So I think tuners are overused, and in the end, the net result isn't really quite as profound as it might be. So the heck with technology. I'm going to use the parts, the original parts right here. You know, let's start right at the beginning if we can. Because here's the deal. We're on it. I think it could be just a little faster. Okay. You don't say, okay, I'm happy to debate it, but it seems a little low. And I know a meditation is not exactly a dance, but if we're meditating at the same time, we're thinking of something, there's got to be some generating some energy. And I think just the slightest bit faster. And here's the deal, because you have an ascent at the very beginning, instead of letting the vibrato come to a rest on some of those long notes, when you still have higher to go, let's see if we can spiral through and connect to create this ascent. You know, what the vibrato, first of all, is a very elusive element, and beyond that, it's very personal. But we create direction with vibrato. There are people who say that they like to use it to hide their pitch, but I mean that's not exactly fair. But if we can make notes go forward, or we can make notes go backward. At the end of a piece, if it says morendo, that is to die away. And the great challenge there is to make the vibrato go slower and narrower, and it means we're dealing with, over a longer period of time, a very fine change of pitch. So that's where the rubber really hits the road in the world of vibrato. But in this case, all we have to do is keep it going. Don't let it settle on these long notes. Let's just try it right where you come in. You started faster. Okay. Let's start the vibrato in that moderate speed and then spin it forward. And I think it really will make a difference. One more time. Good, good. It really does. It connects and it creates this anticipation. And so I think that's one of the things throughout the piece. Generally, a little slow, a little wide, and slowing down is what I'm getting. So you settle on the long notes, even though those notes functionally are going forward. You see what I mean?
Yes.
Am I making sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
We're doing this, but if we kind of belly out on every long note, then we don't have this slight sense. You know, it's a very subtle game we play. I'm trying to use subtle values that my audience won't actually even codify. They won't say, oh, he's fooling me with me using vibrato. But we just want to have that sense that they don't know why they're being moved along, but they are. And we kind of got them, and we're leading them on. That's the real trick, the real artistry. I read a quote the other day about Isaac Stern, and someone said, well, how can you play that simple melody? And it's compelling and it goes somewhere. And he said, well, I can play it the other way. and he did. And then he said,
you see, it's what happens between the notes. When I start the pitch, how do I keep this? It's like keeping a feather in the air. And the minute I stop the air, or I stop that intention to go forward, then it bottoms out. Sir?
It's just not clear exactly what you're asking Mike in this piece to do with the vibrato as you're going up. You're asking for more intensity to connect to the next phrase, or what are you asking? What are you
Thank you for the question. What I'm saying is that this thing is going forward, and it is going. The pitches are going up. Okay, and what we want to do is to make a meditation is not a conversation at the bar. Meditation is, I'm trying to work, usually we're trying to work something out. We're thinking about an item with intensity. And so when he played it the first time, he allowed the vibrato to actually slow down. The emotional intensity went away. I'm asking him to speed the vibrato up a little bit so we have this sense of being moved along or being drawn along. And that as it goes up, there is some sense of life force leading to the next higher note until we finally get where we're going. But if we just have one little event after the next, then we make a lovely vibrato, but then we relax, and then we have another note, and we do the same thing. It becomes very much parenthetical rather than this flow of intensity. We use vibrato. It's one of our greatest tools for achieving that. Therefore, I'll never understand why anyone would play the clarinet.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Yeah.
What if he's going down? I mean, how would you
Well, first of all, the vibrato, we have speed, frequency, and we have how deep it goes, amplitude. The lower we play, the slower the vibrato. If that's, I can't say that not everyone does it. I mean, if you, at some point, I think we're going to hear Boza, and when you hear the mule recording of Boza, he gets down on the low B flat, goes, because one speed fits all in that particular school. And you know what's really interesting? That was the French school for a long time, and now a lot of the French kids aren't using any vibrato at all. They just dumped it, which I think is really dumb, because this is a singing instrument and everyone came here. But as we go lower, the vibrato runs slower. But that wouldn't mean that we wouldn't, even if we were headed down. Let's do this. Mike, why don't you play? Just take a D chord and start on high A, and go D, do, E, and play the chord down. And let's just run the vibrato right to the edge, and don't let it relax. So keep it going on the front, even though we're going to be going slower on each successively lower note.
Keep it going, but go slower.
As you go lower, you will need to have a somewhat slower vibrato. Otherwise, you will sound as if you dropped into a nervous state.
Goodness knows this weekend I'm not going to do that.
Yeah. So he kept the vibrato going. Here's the issue. If we put it in the middle, then it's a lovely ornament, but it does not have function. And it does take courage to play to the edge, because then we have to begin the next note, and folks have the idea they'd like to hear it in tune. So that's the deal. Can we start one more time? And then I'm going to, because I don't want to offend. We can talk more after I've been paid. And furthermore, so that when he plays for the Olympic skaters, they're going to be able to go. Otherwise, they're going to have to go. Because it's become parenthetical. It makes all the sense in the world. Let's listen to it a little bit more. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're a hero.
Great. Next we have a senior music major from University of Maryland, Brent Brendan Kelly is his name. He studies with Dr. Tim Powell. He's going to play Prelude, Cadence, and Finale by Alfred Sesselbro. Brendan Kelly.
fact that Desenclo wrote altogether too many notes, what is another issue in this piece?
I mean, it pretty much demands everything out of the play.
But what is, there's one, I know what I want, you don't. But there's a conspicuous challenge for saxophonists in this piece. And it starts right at the very beginning. What is it?
Playing a low B piano.
He's got us way down in the cell. Now, you have one of the busiest index fingers, left-handed index fingers on the planet. You start off with this. And how did that come about?
My teacher talked about this venting.
That's venting.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Just it's basically starting the air a little bit before you actually close the entire hole, so that it's not like a.
Okay. The word that I like better than venting also starts with a V. It's voicing. And I'd like you to start on E. And let's do this. I teach, I play with China every now and then, and consequently, I look behind me as I get off the plane, and I have a Chinese saxophone student following me to study with me, and it's wonderful. However, the Chinese language is a bit of a problem because it's kind of high, ni hao, and it's up in the front, and so I couldn't solve the problem, but my kids had a hard time finding the one. So I brought in a voice teacher, and she worked with him. And she with my first Chinese student, and she had him doing things like, would you do that? Oh, but you couldn't speak Chinese manner. No. Yeah, now. Yeah, just relax. It's down. You're like an FM announcer. We're listening to GLD Gold. Old music for old people. And so there's no tension at all. It's all wide open. All right, so one more time. No, you aren't. See, we need to have, voicing was Don Sinta's idea. And I always just said, oh, crap. Because my students would say, well, it's the way you have your tongue. I don't use my tongue that way. So I decided that I do believe in voicing, setting up the interior to enhance the delivery of a note, but that I do it with sounds, because that's something my tongue is already accustomed to doing, is making shapes. And then the other thing is to relax lower into the chest. What I sense myself, at least, is that I'm open and hugely relaxed here all the time, and the other shaping goes on just the next step in the production line. So one more time. Support it. You're not going to be an FM announcer, Brendan. All right, so I'd like you to be open like that. Start on E, support it, and play down to B, maintaining this openness, such that you might even feel as if this B is going to get a little tubby and you're going to lose the center. That would be okay for a first try. Okay, let's do it. I'd like you to do it without that finger. Another time without that finger, and even relax more. I mean, just let it really be in the warm spot. Here's what I think. And if there's no chalk here, what kind of a school is this? All right. Okay. This is the note. I gotta lick it again. That's a famous story about Mark Twain. He was lecturing at the medical school at the University of Missouri. And he said, as doctors, you are going to have to be hugely observant. Observation is really what you will do. And everybody had this little jar in front of them. And he said, for instance, you have this jar of fluid. He said, and so put your finger in it and taste it. And so he went, now you do it. And they all put their finger in and licked it. He said, that's observation. I dipped this finger, but licked this one. It was urine. There it is. Okay, so this is the note that you're looking for. That's the eye, that's the warm spot, okay? And this is the setting that you are using. You're on the high side of the low note, and thus it won't speak. Okay, so let's play down one more time and warm it up. Be right down in here, okay? Starting on the E. Yeah, that's good. You even tested the low side that time. What I'd like you to do this time is to play down to it, stop, and then immediately start right where you left off, no left index finger. Did you see you had to escape your tight throat? I heard you do it when you went in the piece, so when you went down and you started tight and then you opened it up because it was going to go away on you. So you can't, this doesn't help when you're about to lose it. Try it one more time. Thank you, sir. And you got that little, what organists would call a chiff note, when it goes, a lot of pipe organs do that. Let's play, this is the last time I'm going to do it. I urge you to do this in the privacy of a practice room, because you should figure out where those notes live, rather than using, first of all, it's very distracting, and you're going to, this finger is going to be useless much sooner than the others as you lead your long life. But one more time, play down to it, and let's begin, okay? Now, we'll start it right there. I'm going to ask you to do it one more time. And don't reset your embouchure, okay? You see, you get a little glottal tightness and it won't speak. I offer this to you because the low notes are harder on the tenor than they are on the alto. And for years, I'd see the low B natural come in, and I'd go, oh no, Mr. Bill, not the low register, and get those kinds of unhappy things. So I took the time, having finally decided that there is such a thing as voicing, and they now start for me with ease. That doesn't mean that I'm not thinking ahead and advancing my pinky, so to think, or if it's possible to have a pinky down ahead of time, oh, that's sweet. But the music doesn't always present that opportunity. So I think that's one of the issues that you might want to think about, because with all due respect to you, teacher, and sending my best, this is crap. And that's a crutch. I mean, see, the lower we go, the truer these notes are harmonically. Some of the best notes we have. We have to believe that they want to come out, not that we have to kick them out by doing this. And it's an artistic interruption. I think of that. You watch these great violinists, you don't see them doing any silly crap. Once in a while, if they've got a note coming and it's kind of questionable, you might see them lean over and go. But other than that, I've seen great violinists play, and I've never seen one go, or anything of the sort. So let's get rid of it. Okay, now, you know, one of the things, you really don't play through these notes. And this is, if there's a passion, romantic moment in this piece, it's that spot, isn't it? You know, I picture it because I'm such a great dancer. I dance in the studio for my students, and I know they talk to each other about it. But that's okay. It's because it's got to be about song or dance. But this one, if there's a physical way to look, it's just, you know, we were watching an opera show last night on television until the storm took it out of the hotel. But you know, it's one of those deals where you really lean into it. Take a shot at that spot. Okay. But is this note softer than that one? No. So what I think is, you're there. You're so full of passion you can't contain yourself, and you start, you know, Julie, you know how much I love you. She's up on the balcony, so you know. So I go, Julie, I'm thinking that I love you. No. We start right off. Come out of the box with a bang, okay? And lengthen that one. Don't worry about the math. You can always make T, T, sing right through to the second. Okay. But I don't think that it's buddy, but I think it's just, it's a fire hose. You know, we use those in riot situations because they're so darn effective. And so you want to do that with this, just play it on them. Just take that hose and don't give them a break. Okay. I think, we all have mannerisms. And fortunately, as we grow older, we hope to hear them and fix them. So I think we need to learn to play through the other. I'm just going to take one more minute. Okay, it's here. This is where you got in a little trouble technically?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to just play into it and see if we can have a little more success this time? If not, then I'll give you the answer. I think one of the things we don't want to do is make each one of these a destination.
Yeah.
Because then it just becomes the melody. Look, and it sounds like we're cranking out something on a conveyor belt at a factory. It's really watching and thinking, I have use for that. do you talk much about grouping?
Yeah.
Okay. How do you talk about it?
More of like where the group starts and then ends. I have some
Okay, good. 2 minutes. I'm very interested in the opening field of neuroscience, since we can appreciate it more now that we can watch what's going on in real time. Imaging has really given us a whole new world. But here's what we know. We can, in terms of bits of information, we can hold between 5 and 7 bits. Take a look at your phone number. If you're in my area code, I'll remember your phone number if you tell me. If you give me a different area code, I'm trying like hell, but I can't remember it. It's too many. 7 is the ideal. So, in this case, we've got to find groups, and sometimes we want to find little groups that are quite similar. So I'm going to go back to this spot, however you got it. Okay. Okay, you know how to turn these pages. So here. And then I'm going to do that because I think it'd be nicer if that weren't staccato. Rather had a little more length. This takes care of itself. This takes care of itself. And here's what's happening, friends. We've got 15 or 16 notes. If we try to play them all and we don't organize them, then it's more than we can digest intellectually. I'm reading a book about the mind, Ramadasharian, University of California, San Diego, and I just started the chapter about the nature of man to organize things. And he uses the word to group. I laughed out loud. But we do it visually. If you see a bunch of dots and suddenly you say, wait a minute, if I look at this correctly, it's this, you see. And so I think we do this so we can conquer it technically, so we can install it really clearly. And then the next thing is we do it so that it's somewhat more understandable audibly to the audience. Otherwise, it's just a zipper going on a winter jacket. So, can we hear, can I just hear you go, da da da, just those, the C sharp to the G. And let's work da da da. And then let's resolve it da 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 D. Okay, let's do this, just to the beat. I just want to clearer sense of it, don't you? That's because we've put it in smaller pieces. I mean, I'm using it here somewhere, but just look in the concerto I'm going to play. I've got all of these brackets, and it allows me two things. It allows me to come back a year later, and I've left myself some tips, and on the other hand, it gives me something to disagree with. If I get a different musical sense, and that's a good thing, because, you know, Rubinstein, the great pianist, he recorded, Horowitz for that matter, they recorded the same piece 5 and 6 times. I'm sure there was some economic thing involved, but as they grew older, they had a different view. And so I leave those messages for myself, but mostly this would help you learn it so that you wouldn't have those moments. Hold it. This is proof positive. See, and that's a snotty spot. If I didn't make that break, the group is that way, and this is even snottier. And so you see, it's replete with to get out of these licks. And so I think you ought to just doing that as part of a learning process. Right. And with all due respect to our wonderful computers, we don't have a delete button. So once you put some confused crap in, then it lives there, even if you clear it up later. You know, the inner game of tennis, to correct an incorrect swing, it takes 100,000 reps, and then if you go back to your old habit, then you have to add some more reps, because since we can't get rid of what we've been doing, we have to cover it up. And so it'd be far better to just start out and say, I go through, I put in fingerings, a new piece of music, I put in fingerings, and then I play through and I find those spots. It'll be easier to find them, because I'm really not that smart or that good. I put checks in the margins, because I know that's where I've got to go back and do work, where I need to make particularly clear installments in my mind. And then if in the context of that, I find that there is in fact a small technical glitch, what I know is that if I've seen it clearly here, then it's got to be the circuitry between the brain and the fingers. And so then I will blaze some more neural pathways, or strengthen the neural pathways, to get it where I can call on it, and it might even work. Thank you, Brandon, for being here. I owe you thanks. You know, I don't know if I know anything, but Lord, I love to teach.
Thank you, Brendan. Next we have last participant, Rachel Morgan, an alto saxophonist from Towson High School. Her private instructor is Joe Bristuso, and she will be playing Introduction in Caprice by Boza and Walter Hartley's Petite Suite. So Mr. Houlik may want to choose some movements or something. Rachel Morgan.
Rachel, why don't we do the Boza, and then we'll see how we do on that, and then we can always pick a couple of movements. Are you doing all of them?
I'm just doing 3 movements.
Which ones?
The third, second, and fifth.
Give me the name. I have this game that I sometimes play. It's not a game, but I call it. It's the Houlik adjective game. Tell me about the first. First of all, he gives us a big clue, doesn't he? Improvisation?
Yeah.
So as someone who's interpreting this piece, what would that tell you? How does that set you up?
More free, and you can kind of take more liberty with the phrasing and stuff.
Exactly. And of course, you're playing in front of these people, that may change the rate at which you play, but it sounded like you were pushing along a little bit. Let it breathe a little bit, you know. In fact, let's just take the very opening phrase. Take the first note, let it blossom, and then let those next notes come flying, falling out of it, not flying. Settle down. Play that little motive again. And as you come out of it, settle. What's happening here is we get a little excited, and then we get unexcited. And then we get a little excited again, till finally we're there saying it, aren't we? You know where the climax is, right? You can see that. So we head toward it, and we go, no, we don't have to finish this right now, and then we have another run at it. So that's the kind of pacing that I'm talking about. All right? Just take that where you were and ease up as you come out. And go forward. As with our friend Brendan, don't worry, don't stay away from opening up if you can. Okay, here we go. So you want to be looking for, you know, you don't want to drive behind a person like this, but they keep fooling around with the accelerator, all right? And so lean into it a little bit, come back a little bit, and be sensitive to those places where Boza gives you the opportunity to do that, all right? Go ahead, pick a spot. Can't go wrong. Contrasts by cranking it up and then relaxing. You know, we have a challenge here. You're just standing there, you yourself and you, and we're trying to engage these people. So we have to have the sense that, in a way, we're telling a story. I had my entire saxophone class at the North Carolina School of the Arts on the road. It must have been crazy. But we were playing quartets and then a large ensemble. It sounded like a theater organ gone berserk. But we were playing in western North Carolina. And we ended up in a little town where there was a Quaker community. And we went to their meeting house and we played for them. And then they had storytelling. And she was magical. And she just started and it just was building. And she didn't let us off the hook. She might pull back. And just at the right moment, she would re-enter, and we begin to hear that things were coming along and spilling out with greater intensity. I used to go to black churches in North Carolina to hear that happen, because those ministers can feed it out in such a way that you can't get off the bus. And that's your job here, is to create this kind of, and then you relax. And just when the folks in the audience begin to, you lean in again. That's what we should be looking for here, is the mastery of the flow of expressivity and emotional content. All right? Let's hear some of the heartbeat. Or play the whole heartbeat. We're okay time-wise. Yeah, good. All right. Got to do 3 movements. Wait a minute. Introduction is necessary. 1966 or 67, 66, I launched my legendary career. My office was an aluminum picnic table and a really bulky typewriter. If you have a career, then critics have heard you play, and you could write about in your little flyer where you've played, and you can let critics claim your wondrousness. Well, I didn't have any of that. So I did, he did this, he did this, he did that, and then over here, I had a list of repertoire. And so I mailed these things to colleges all over the country, hoping to get a chance to play. And I get a reply from the chairman of music at Davis and Elkins College, who was Walter Hartley. And he said, I seen in your list of my teen swing. I didn't even own the damn. So I quickly got one, and I played it for him in that program. I did it. He hired us, and we went up and did it. Well, he told me later that he has a perfect pitch, and he wrote it for alto. I played it on tenor, and he heard the entire thing in organ. He couldn't stop hearing it in the alto key, so he was hearing the alto and tenor parts as if they were happening simultaneously. So, but he wrote me the poem that you showed me. Let's look at Walter's face. Hold it up. Walter Hartley. He's fading now. He had a stroke and it's become difficult. We've had few better friends because he has written 50 or 60 pieces. He's one of the smarter composers who didn't think he needed to write another piece for violin that wouldn't be played. We were the hungry guys. And so he's written a lot for us. And as a result, he's got so many performances. Now that's a very long introduction. Go ahead. Suppose you need 3 and 3 and 3, and then this one resolves. Let's just go do-de-da, do-de-da, starting on the beginning. Make a loop. Okay, and then we're going to go D-da-D. So we'll repeat it a few times. And then let's do this. The other thing is, if you learn it from the back end, we always learn from the front, and we repeat it over and over again, staying confused as we go, when in fact, if we take the last part of it and we really embed it, and then you go back and you do the next thing you know, having recognized the destination, it seems that we get there with much more logic and general clarity. I would suggest that's something you should do a little bit. So I guess I can't think of it. It seems a little... and the reason I say that it seems out of breath is because I think this movement has an element of humor. I mean, it varies between sort of light, sprightly characters and then the slightly overweight dancer comes in and goes, so slow it down the slightest bit and see if we can focus on the idea that this may have humorous content. But you're running right through it. It's like a run-on sentence. I once had a neighbor like that. She'd catch me if I was outside. And I don't know, she must have taken air in the back of her head because her sentences never stopped. Better that we would organize. And so let's begin to look for that. That's tongue in cheek. So I think we have to refurbish the idea of this piece with greater humor. Okay? Think of it. And will you give my very best to your teacher?
Okay.
How long have I known your dad?
4 years.
we did. We drank some beer that night that I did. All right. So looking for the meaning, it's got to be part of it. All right? And we can let the others go because we talked about the important stuff. Okay? Thank you for that.
I would like to thank our masterclass participants, and thank you as well for coming out and joining us. And how about a huge hand for the legend, Mr. James Houlik.
Call maybe 2 years ago from a young man who was finishing his doctorate in Iowa, and it was time for a dissertation, and he wanted to know, could he write his dissertation on me? And I said, does it mean I have to die now? I don't like legend because it's sort of, looking for my name in the graveyard. At any rate, thank you folks for being here. It's a great pleasure to work with young people and to have supportive audience. Thank you so much.